clearly, organizations like BEALE are still needed because I think the genius of the Alinsky method was to bring together groups with common interest and then to focus that interest and to take on in an aggressive action way those forces which would oppose the development and the continuing growth within the African American community. I do believe that the principle of mass-based organizations are still very, very valid. I think the issues have changed. The environment is totally different. I think there's called for new paradigms to come forward in terms of looking at how one begins to move these issues. We've seen over that period of time in the last 30 years, really, growing number of African Americans in what is considered to be, quote, the underclass. We have seen a growing part of the middle class move out of the inner cities into the suburbs to follow the jobs and other opportunities. I think there are new problems that are much more deeply embedded in terms of the urban crisis that we see in our country today, and will take some real innovative kinds of approaches. B.U.I.L.D, or the B.U.I.L.D type organizations, I do believe had the ability and still do have the ability to work within the community to come up with solutions and with programs and with plans to address the needs and the concerns of people there. So yes, I would agree that Buffalo, like most African American communities across this country, could use a B.U.I.L.D type organization.
Why not follow in the footsteps of B.U.I.L.D? But you have to be dedicated. You can't do it because, see, they're going to offer you something. If they offer you something, then they silence you. Not all the time, okay? But you have to be dedicated to the point where you want to see some things done. And you got a lot of good potential here. You got a lot of good. I talk to young people all the time and tell them, if you want something done, just get a committee together and you can do it. But you've got to, when you look at City Hall, or you look at the state, or you look at the federal government, I'm just saying, they will come in with a program. If they see where you're going to try to get organized, they did everything they could to keep Saul Alinsky out here, even turn the black community upside down by saying, we don't want nobody in like that, you know, we can do it ourselves. And what you have to do is ignore them and go ahead, because this man came in, Richard Harmon came in here in 6 months. He knew how to do it. He had the skills to do it. Now that we know what has to be done, just go ahead and do it.
But you see, what you have here now is you have folk that have so-called climbed the economic ladder. They're about at the third rung, you see, and they vow that they ain't going back one rung or two rungs down. So they're gonna fight to stay on that third rung. And if it means sacrificing you, me, or some other folk in the community, then so be it. You have that particular attitude. I mean, if you look at any of the organizations that are so-called black per se, they have no power to do anything. Only power that they have is to mobilize blacks to get out the vote for white folks. And just look at it. I mean, you have political organizations. In fact, one of my son said to me the other day, one of the kids that he grew up, that he went to high school with, was working at a public school, and he was working with the engineer there, and his only hope was that the engineer would someday retire, which, you know, these engineers, I mean, they got it made, got it running, so, you know. So he said to my son that what he was going to do at the beginning of the year was he was going to quit his job and he was going to work for one of the black political organizations and start passing out political literature and moving up and then getting a job through the organization that way. That was his way of becoming a viable, getting into the mainstream, I should say. He said that he could get a job making at least $35,000 or $40,000 in a political, with a political appointment. You know, and I thought about that for a minute, you know, that kind of attitude from my son is 34 years old, coming from a 34-year-old young man who's a high school graduate. I don't know if he went to college, but do you see what the problem is? Based on, can you imagine a 34-year-old man saying that the only way that he is going to make a decent living so that he can provide for his family is to get a political job? I mean, this is, this is the attitude of our young black men.
It's become a fan.
I mean, to me, you know, all I could do was sit down tell my son, let's sit down and talk about this for a minute, because it kind of, it really kind of hit home with me, because I always raised my children to never depend upon a politician for a job. No way, shape, form, or fashion. That's why I prepared for them, you know, to go to college, to get that degree, and no matter, and to have that degree, that way they can go anywhere and have, you know, as long as their mind is focused, you know, they could compete in the job market for a viable job. Because the minute you go that route, you're opening yourself up. I mean, you're just opening. Even if you do get a job, how long is this politician going to be? What is your family to do after that? I mean, if this one loses, it's that kind of mentality that really bothers me about young blacks. But you see, if you look at our community, where else? I mean, this is the kind of thinking. You look at that, our community breeds this. It breeds this sort of thinking, you see. We don't have, I could go on, we could go on and on about this. I would hope that we would learn how to run some of these hospitals, perhaps run some of these, become small businessmen, get involved in some of the non-traditional fields. I mean, technology now is, like, just being able to run a camera is a skill. I mean, cameramen, technicians, computers. I mean, there is such a, some of these Fortune 500 companies are, you'd be surprised what you can do other than depend on a politician. Politics certainly is a way of life, but it should not be a way, it should not be something that our young people ought to be trying to make a career out of.
It would seem to me that for the history of the BEALE organization to be told, two things happen. One is that people that were not aware are now aware. that all was not lost at some point, that we did make gains, and if we gather our resources, and the greatest resource that we can have are people that we can move on and we can do things that we never thought was possible, because we can see the beacon of light, and the beacon of light is the BEALE organization.
We have now come to the end of our program. You have heard a great deal of information, a great deal of history, both positive as well as negative. Unfortunately, the negative seems to always outweigh the positive. For those of you that feel this way, please take under consideration that despite any of the negative points that you may have heard, what's truly more important is that the BUILD organization has a long and distinguished history. When some choose to ask, what's the use of history? The answer is that it deepens our appreciation for the long road which was traveled by those before us. The men and women that you've heard from were on the front lines of this local struggle. And regardless of their ideologies and directions that they wanted to take this organization into, the one thing that they all had in common is that they did what they felt was best for the black community in the city of Buffalo, New York. These people dared to dream big dreams and paid a heavy price for those dreams. BUILD was a large organization of many people, not just the people you saw in this program. They can be your parents, grandparents, neighbors, etc. So aside from what you've seen here, there are many more stories to be told. Although the BUILD organization is no longer with us, its spirit continues to live on. In the present Juneteenth Committee, the Buffalo Halfway House, BUILD Academy, Community Voice, as well as other community organizations, community schools, and magnet schools. The struggle continues. For Jet Set Entertainment, I'm Doug Ruffin. Good night and God bless.